All right, man. This is episode number 78 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema. This is being recorded on Monday, September 25th, 2023 at 4:12 p.m. I hope you all have had a very productive and very solid past week since the last episode. Hope you've been working on your dreams and your goals, making sure you're doing exactly what you want to do, whether it's watching films or working on your art or working on whatever it is, man. Now, I'll tell you guys at the forefront right now that I'm fairly getting better, but I'm still pretty sick right now. I've been sick for the past almost a week now. Very sore throat. So, I've just in the past day or so been able to fully talk again. And if you can hear it, I got kind of a sniffling voice in a way. I've been blowing my nose all day. So that's just one thing on top of the other. And I intentionally had delayed this episode to the last second, which was today, because I thought that I'd feel better than I did yesterday, and I kind of do. So here we are. So if I'm talking a little bit quieter, a little bit slower, that's what it is. So I just want to give a heads up on that, but didn't want to miss a week, haven't missed a week yet, and don't plan on anytime soon. So with all that out of the way, let us commence forward. So get this here. I'll talk about this book that I had finished reading a little while ago. I finished reading this probably about a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. 'Cause I've just finished another book in that time, and I've now started another one since. That's the thing with books, man, is that there's just books and films. There's just so many that you got to keep yourself organized with what you want to watch, what you want to read, because there's just so much out there, and you're never going to be able to get through it all. But if you prioritize your time and you kind of make an effort to really focus on what it is you want to spend your time on, then I think you'll get a decent amount done. I mean, one of the benefits in the past week or so is that unfortunately really no writing has gotten done. I've had a total brain fog, and I've tried, and I'm sitting there and nothing's coming out, man. So I'm like, all right, nothing productive's gonna get done. I'm not gonna sit here staring at a screen. I'm gonna use this time to get some films watched, because I need to get some films watched. Because time's running out on certain things. Got to keep up with a couple different things. So this past week, I've been using the opportunity to watch many films. And it's been a very, very productive week in that front. But what I was saying before is that with this book, I have this book here from writer Eric Danville. This was copyright, I think it was 2013. Pull it up here. Because this is the second edition of this book. And let's see. Always got to look at the first couple pages. Copyright 2013 by Eric Danville and Power Process Publishing LLC. And this is his second edition, I believe, of the complete Linda Lovelace, a deeper than deep look at America's first porn queen. Now, I've talked about Deep Throat on the show before. I talked about it on its 50th anniversary, the month that was back in June of last year. I talked about that in correlation with, or I'm sorry, what, did I say 50th? Actually, that can't be true. Or no, I'm sorry, yeah, it had to make sure it was 1972. I apologize. I was talking about it in conversation with The Godfather celebrating his 50th. And that film as well, I do apologize, I'm going to yawn. Like I said, I'm very sick right now, so I do apologize. I'm getting better, I should say. I'm just a little bit stuffy. So, but anyways, I was talking about the 50th anniversary of that. And now this book, I would say, it's a really solid read overall. I mean, when it comes to shallow kind of response, very generic, I can say that this is a very fantastic book. That it took me a little bit of time to adjust to the format and the way that the information is presented, but it's very interesting in the way that Eric Danville presents this information. What he does is that, and there's a lot of images in this book as well. There's like QR codes. You can go online and you can, go into the Dropbox and listen to interviews and look at pictures and stuff. And it's really interesting the way that he structures this, because it's not, Linda Lovelace is somebody who's been talked about a lot, who's been written about a lot. She's had her say in her past. Other people have said their perspective of her past. We're at the point now where a lot of these people are dead. So it's sort of like a lot of the information is probably going to be unresolved on what exactly happened, on whose side was right. I mean, you look at Linda Borman's gone. Harry Reams is gone, Gerard Damiano's gone, Chuck Trainor's gone, a lot of them are gone, man. I'm blanking on the name of, which another thing is that my memory, my head right now is a little fuzzy. So some information, sorry, some information might not be at the tip of my head, but Dolly, whatever her name is, who was also in Deep Throat with her, I believe she's gone as well. Dolly, don't remember her last name. I'm not gonna look it up. But anyway, so what this book does is that it looks at a couple different aspects when it comes to Linda. It looks at a general kind of history of her relationship with Chuck Trainer, the loops, the 8 millimeter loops they were doing early on in her career, and then her acting in Deep Throat, the major success that it got, trying to ride off that success, with some not so great work after that, the kind of downfall, the idea of censorship and being prosecuted in America for art. And then sort of her fallout with the porn industry, a lot of the people involved with her, becoming part of this feminist movement to kind of condemn porn and talk about how she was being abused, and then her fallout from the feminist movement and sort of the complicated relationship that she has. And that's what this book really does, is that it kind of shows that, Lovelace, or Borman, I should say, was a very complex person in terms that you can draw your own conclusions to her overall, to a lot of the information overall. I would also say a good companion piece to not only obviously the film Deep Throat to the book would be an episode from the Rialto Report, which features Eric Danville and Gerard Damiano's son, whose name I do apologize. And this came out on around the same time that the Lovelace film came out with Amanda Seyfried, Peter Skarsgård, Hank Azaria, Chloe Sevigny, Chris Noth, James Franco, Bobby Cannavale. Do you remember who else was in it? Who played the mom? Patricia Arquette. This is off memory. I don't remember who else was in the film. Robert Patrick was in the film. And it was sort of, they were talking about, now, this book came out before, or the second issue of this came out before the Lovelace film, because what the book does. So the book had to have been published probably right before the film came out, because I think the film was 2013 that it got its wide release. And that was a film that they talk about on the show, because that was one of the things with this book, is that it brought up, it breaks down Lovelace's different media that she was a part in. So it talks about her loops, her films, the music, like the soundtracks that got put out involved with Deep Throat, the books that came out about Deep Throat or by Linda, Lovelace, the different ones that she did and stuff. And they were on the show, they were fairly critical of the film for its historical inaccuracies, because with a story like this, there's always been a lot of back and forth between differing kind of memories. And for one of the biggest being that Linda talks about how after shooting one night, everybody in the other room was partying and having fun, and Chuck Trainer, her manager and boyfriend at the time, was very abusive towards her. You can see it in the film, she got bruises on her, and he was just beating the hell out of her, and she was calling for somebody to come help her, and no one did. They turned down the music, and they kind of just waited for it to be over. So she talked about it being a big point, but then, you have Gerard Damiano's kid, who was on the set, who was, a young kid, but he was still on the set at the time, and he tells a different story I forgot exactly how he said it, but he said that people did come in. So, I mean, it's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of, I can't really pick a side, obviously, because I wasn't there. So, I mean, it's a matter of, which seems most likely. And in a situation like that, I really don't know. And all I can do is really ponder more so than speculate, because there's nothing that I can really add to the conversation in that regard. But I'm talking about the sexual difference in the story and something like that. But the book itself, I mean, it goes through, it's, the first part of it is all about, it goes through different news headlines from, it'll say like either specific articles, like May 14th, 1973, screw the throat that swallowed the heart of America. And it'll go up to like July 1973 with different things there. It's about different interviews with her, different, magazine covers that she was doing. There's a lot of photos in this book. I think above all else, the photos in this alone really make it kind of worth it. There's a lot of stuff that I had never seen before. There's a lot of stuff that, that in relation to, some of the photo shoots she was doing at the time, and, the dog loops, those 8 millimeter films. There's no photos of that in there. I mean, I think because Eric Danville had been friendly enough with Linda before her death in 2002, I believe it was, and the dog loop that she did was something that kind of haunted her. Pretty much her whole life after that point. So I think it was in good conscience to not have any photos of those. I mean, those are fairly available should you seek those out. But in the book, at least, they talk about two different loops. There's Dog One, directed by Bob Wolf, also starring Eric Edwards and Norman. Actually, Eric Edwards just talked about it a little while ago. The movie Blue Summer a couple weeks ago, and Dog Fucker, aka Dogorama, directed by Bob Wolf, also starring Norman. And they talk about, I mean, there's been some stories as well about the background of those loops as well. I mean, Linda says that she was forced into it. Other people said that she really enjoyed it. I mean, the loops themselves are, I don't remember if Dog One and Dog Fucker were the same ones or not. I'm trying to remember, and I can't really skim it right now as I'm recording it. But let's see here. Okay, so pull that up over here. Try to skim through and see what some of this stuff says so I can read it. Because, I mean, when it comes to those loops, there's been some differing stories from Linda, from the people involved. But, let's see here. It says, Dog One opens with Edwards and Linda fucking on a bed. Oh, I should also say, if you're, this next bit's going to be kind of explicit, so if you don't want to hear this kind of stuff, just go ahead and skip ahead a little bit. It's a little explicit what I'm about to say. So, Dog One opens with Edwards. Yeah, there we go. Dog One opens with Edwards and Linda fucking on a bed. A short oral sex scene leads to a short anal scene, neither of which are too remarkable by either of their standards. Edwards pulls out of her butt, comes on her ass, gets dressed, and walks out the door. Linda, still unsatisfied, flips from the bird. Enter her next co-star, who thinks she looks just fetching. And then she says... Edwards says, I did my scene with her, and that's when they brought Fido in. Edwards recalls of the shoot. I sat down off to the side behind the camera watching, and my jaw just dropped. That dog didn't need any coaching at all. He knew what to do. I don't remember if Chuck was even there during the shoot. I don't think he was. But I remember there was no coercion going on, and certainly no gun. And when it was over, I was just like, wow. Trainer's comments and Screw to the contrary. Dog Fucker doesn't contain the same footage as Dog One, shot from a different angle. It is a completely different film and shows only Linda and the dog. One widely distributed European print edits the two films together. So there you go. But just a wealth of information in this book, man. And it's not a very long book either. I mean, it's fairly thin, but there's just a lot of information to jam-packed into a lot of this. To talk about the court transcripts that, when Linda went to go testify against pornography. And it's what Eric is doing is that he's taking a very, he's not really siding with either the pornography business or the feminists in this case. He kind of comes to the same resolution that I kind of got to myself, that, Linda herself has, been through a lot. She was in an abusive relationship. She was, probably maybe, enjoying these films early on, but then kind of, looking back on it, maybe has some regrets. Or, what I kind of got from a lot of it is maybe, believing some of these memories that maybe did happen or didn't happen. More so like didn't happen, where, where she believes that they did. That maybe starts to distort things, or maybe she sincerely believes some of what she's saying. Maybe some stuff actually did happen, and, it's up to the reader to kind of draw a lot of their own conclusions from a lot of this. But either way, I mean, there's just so much here. There's just if you were trying to go through, a lot of the information connected to Deep Throat or, to Linda Lovelace, this is pretty much the place to be, man. This book has just a wealth of knowledge. It talks about, this section here, you have, I never knew there was novelizations of Deep Throat and Deep Throat Part 2, novelization of Linda Lovelace for President, and then you have, required reading, which is, stuff like the Deep Throat Papers, getting into Deep Throat, Blue Money, Pornography and the Pornographers, and then there's this other, of interest books. Here Comes Harry Reams, which I didn't even... And that book's been out of print for a while, but I didn't realize that on the Rialto Report's website, they actually are still selling copies. So if you're listening to this and you're interested in that, you can go ahead and get that. That's from 1975. It's only a couple years after Deep Throat. Al Goldstein's biography or autobiography, I believe. Yeah, this book is called I, Goldstein, and it says by Al Goldstein and Josh Allen Friedman. So that might have to be read. I mean, when a lot of these, when it comes to like Al Goldstein's book or Ordeal, which was Linda's main book when it came to talking about her experiences in the industry and her negative experiences. That's the book that, you read for kind of context's sake, with only a grain of salt being how much this is actually true or not. It's like Tracy Lord's book. It's, you could read it for some context, probably into the industry at the time, but, I think with Tracy Lord's more so than Linda Lovelace, that a lot of that information has been widely disputed or has been widely challenged, where if you listen to a lot of the people that she was involved with, almost everyone is not on her side in terms of kind of the idea that to them, that she lied about a lot of stuff, that she kind of threw a lot of people under the bus, and that's a whole other point right there. She wrote a book talking about her, her time in the industry and how she was drugged and stuff, and how everybody else is saying like this is a complete fabrication. None of this is true. I think I've mentioned on the show before. I don't know, but I would also recommend the mini podcast series, Once Upon a Time in Venice, which was co-written, I believe, by Ashley from the Rialto Report, which is the whole Tracy Lord saga. It starts off with looking at it from her perspective, or from the industry perspective, from her perspective, and then trying to find somewhere in the middle of fact and fiction. And I think this book does that to a degree. This is more of a compendium of knowledge of involvements with Linda, with Deep Throat, but this does have a really solid interview at the end with Danville and with Linda, where he points out, I should say Borman, actually, Linda Borman, but talks about, he as an interviewer, he is quick to point out some of her hypocrisy, some of her contradictions, but she's very steadfast, she's very firm in a lot of her beliefs. Let me see if I actually find a passage here that maybe I can. So, see, I'm going to read a little bit of a passage right here just to get an idea, because it's a very interesting interview, and I don't want to give all of it away. It's about, it's like 10 or so pages, I think, and it's all small text, too, so there is that, but I'll read a little bit of it here to get an idea of where her mindset is, and where Danville is. Let's see here. So Danville, and this is in the middle of a conversation, so he's kind of pressing her about her opinions on pornography, and anyways, I'll read some of it. But anyways, so I'll just say Danville Borman. So Danville says, "You love sex, you're just not really into the commercial aspect of it." Borman, "I think it's sad, I really do. I think that if two people can't communicate and enjoy sex together, they shouldn't be together. To have to watch somebody else having sex to be stimulated, I think that shows you've got a problem. Or I think that shows you've got a problem." Danville, "Let's say there's a guy in a wheelchair, ... Borman, "Oh no, I hear this all the time. What about the guy in the wheelchair?" Danville, "Or a guy so socially inept that his only sexual outlet is watching porn." Borman, "Like I'm saying, they've got a problem." Danville, "Can't that guy's problem be dealt with by watching porn in the privacy of his own home?" Borman, "I don't think so, because most of the porn that's out there, I'd say 70% of it is kiddie porn, child porn. How can that stimulate anybody?" Danville, "Actually, it's not that high a percentage." And then there's an asterisk. There's actually a little thing that here that says they're both wrong and says that there's not an official stat on how much actual child porn is out there for different reasons. Anyways, Borman, "It's the biggest seller. Kiddie porn is the biggest seller in magazines, photographs, ... Danville, "That's not the kind of pornography I'm talking about, though." Borman, "I don't watch pornographic movies, so I don't really know what's out there. From what I read and from what I read and the research I see, From what I read and the research I see when we do lectures, most of it's very degrading to women. Somebody's always being degraded. It's not real passion. If they had a movie where there was real passion, I could see the guys in a wheelchair watching it, seeing it for what it really is. To show a woman wanting to get beat up and smacked around and pissed on and shit on, no, I don't think that's healthy for anybody, even the person in a wheelchair. So it really depends on the content." Danville, "Anti-porn activists always bring up piss videos and shit videos. We're not allowed to do them here." Which I don't know if that's actually true or not. Borman, "You still do them here. Don't give me that." Danville, "Not in the big mainstream commercial sense." Borman, it's all the stuff that's under the table. Danville, most of that stuff comes from Europe. Borman, then how come they get away with making kiddie porn? Do you know the youngest victim is 13 months old? Danville, they don't get away with making kiddie porn. The police and the FBI are always busting people for kiddie porn, but we're not talking about kiddie porn. Borman, and I'll finish this up in a second. You can go to any pornographic theater or store anywhere in the country, and if you wanted kiddie porn, you could get it. Danville, no, you can't. Borman, I don't agree with that. Danville, when's the last time you were in a porn store? And he laughs. Borman, I haven't been. She laughs. Danville, kiddie porn is an underground industry. Everyone's against kiddie porn. Borman, that to me is what's happened because of Deep Throat. I feel like Deep Throat gave pornography credibility and people were able to accept it. Husbands and wives went to see it together. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe back then they did have kiddie porn. It just seems that if people are stimulated to a certain point, they eventually want something different. Maybe something more aggressive. Maybe something more abusive. Maybe something more bizarre. Then they make movies where women are getting beaten up and they make child pornography. And it goes on for much longer here. I didn't want to read all of it because this goes on for pages and pages. It's a really fascinating conversation. And I do like Danville is very upfront with some of the contradictions, some of the hypocrisies, because even there you can talk about, she's saying that, oh, the guy in the wheelchair has a problem. And he's saying, but what if this is like something else like that's, good for him? And she says, well, if it's like a something like sensual, like, I'm sure she's thinking like a softcore sort of thing, then yeah, that's one thing. So right there, but that whole conversation is just fantastic. It's really, and no one's blaming Linda or anything like that. I mean, like I said before, it's one of these cases where she's had such a tricky past, and I'm sure there's probably a lot that she feels very uncomfortable about. It doesn't want to talk about. I mean, in the interview on the show, Ashley West, who hosted, asks Danville, is there anything that she didn't like about the book? And he said that she was very emotional about the stuff with, talking about the stuff with the dog loops. And his point was that, if I need to get an entire background, I have to include everything. I can't leave certain things out like that, unfortunately. And so I recommend listening to that episode. I recommend this book as well. I ordered it off Amazon. This is a self-published book, and he says that there's a couple typos in here in his previous edition, but there's only a few here, man. I mean, it's sort of like, it's not too bad in terms of typos. I've read a couple books where it's just like, I constantly have to stop myself. Like, this is truly, there was one book that I read where I'm like, man, no one reread this, man. There are typos on almost every other line. This is ridiculous. There's no way you could have missed some of those. But fantastic book. Really solid. If you're a fan of, if you're interested in Linda Lovelace, you're interested in Deep Throat. I mean, if you're interested in, porno chic, specifically from Deep Throat and Linda Lovelace, because it doesn't really talk about, the evolution of porn after the fact. It talks a little bit about Marilyn Chambers and how after the falling out with Chuck and Linda, how Chuck went on to manage and date Marilyn Chambers, who would do Beyond the Green Door, which was a huge success. It was a big film, big staple of the time. And I think funny enough, with Marilyn Chambers, I always knew her first before I knew her as an adult actor, because as everybody has probably seen, which is David Cronenberg's Rabid. And I was like, wow, she's such a unique beauty in this film. I was like, who is this actor? And then you look her up, and I was like, okay, Beyond the Green Door, and she has a bunch of other films and stuff. I mean, she's just a natural beauty, man. And she's solid in Rabid. I think she's actually does a very good job, and I think that's in part of David Cronenberg being very good with directing actors and getting very good performances out of them. I think he's just exceptional at that. We kind of see that now a little bit. You have some porn actors who either stay in the industry and do commercial films, or leave and do commercial films. You have like Sasha Grey, who was in The Girlfriend Experience by Steven Soderbergh, which I want to rewatch. I saw it once when it came out. I don't remember much about it. I remember not being crazy about it, but this is also when it came out. So 2012. You have James Dean, who was in The Canyons by Paul Schrader. It's a different time now, and I think that I would say that if Linda was still you have like I think it's Amberlyn or Gingerlyn. One of them was in like some of the Rob Zombie stuff. You have Tracy Lords and the John Waters stuff. I mean, it's just it's a different time now, but also because it's a different time, a lot of these films that whole era is gone. There is no going to the cinema to see these adult films now. Deep Throat is now considerably tame in a sea of all these other kind of adult films that we have now, and just any extreme that you want, and no matter any legal extreme, I should say. Well, I mean, I guess any extreme you want, is only a couple fingertips away. People find whatever they want to find, either on the surface web or on the deep web or anything like that. It's wild as hell, man, but it's just a different era. The sound recorder app that I use on my computer, I think it gives me the different times, man, because there's been a couple times where I thought I was running out of time, and when I went to upload it, it was shorter than I thought. I'm looking at it now. At the time I am recording this, it's 27 minutes and 10, 11, 12 seconds. So I'll listen back to this and I will see if that actually adds up. But I'm going to end this just a wee bit early, a couple minutes early, if the time is correct, because it is. I need to get something to eat, get something to drink for my throat, get this cold out of the way. I got so much to do this week. It's not even funny, but we're going to get it done one thing at a time. There's so much to get done, and it can seem overwhelming at first. And if you're, not just in your creative endeavors, but if you're at work or you're ever and you're like, oh my God, I got to get X, Y, and Z done. I haven't even started on A, B, and C. It's like, brother, you just take it one thing at a time. You just work on X, work on Y, then work on Z, and it'll all get done. But all right, man, I'm going to get out of here. So you guys take care, and I will return next week.